Writing has a reputation as a solitary affair. Authors can spend months or even years working on a book, editing everything to perfection, publishing it, and then what? Selling books online is not the only way to sell a book. There is the good old fashioned method known as face to face selling. Personally, I am a huge fan of selling at live events like craft fairs and conventions. They give me a chance to talk to readers face to face, show my enthusiasm for my work, and help get my name out there because more than 4 million books were published last year in the United States alone. Readers have a huge amount of choices out there for what to read, and I believe making yourself visible face to face is a great way to set yourself apart from the crowd and build deeper, more personal connections that can help translate into long term readers and long term fans. So, in this video, we are going to be talking about selling books at conventions versus craft fairs. Now, for the sake of this video, I would define a craft fair as any one-day event. It doesn't necessarily have to be specifically about books. There can be some book fairs where everybody there is an author. I am doing one like that in July, but I've also done craft fairs where I was the only author there, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff like knitting and woodwork and paintings and sculpture and beadwork. It can run the gamut. So for the sake of this video, it's a one-day event. Conventions, bigger deal. 3-day events or typically over a weekend. I am no stranger to selling in either location. This April, I was at JordanCon in Atlanta, Georgia. You can see me here with my table and my setup. Later on, I will have another video or another photo from a different convention I've done. And there are some skills that transfer to both situations. There are some important differences to consider. So if you are a new author just starting out, and you have only one, maybe two books to your name, I would recommend focusing on craft fairs over conventions. You want the cheapest table fees you can find, and you want events that are reasonably close to your home. And the reason I say that is the stakes are a lot lower. The calculus on how many books you need to sell to break even, or if it is worth your time or not, is going to be very different at an event with a $25 or a $35 table fee that is a 20-minute drive from your house versus an event that has a $100 table fee. It's 90 minutes away or even further away, and you need to fly there, and there's inventory logistics that pop up that don't happen when you can just put your books in the trunk of your car and drive. Those are very different circumstances. So starting out, I would start with the craft fairs and lower table fees. Work on getting your setup as polished and professional as possible. Work on how you pitch your book to readers. And then with more experience and more books available, then larger events and larger table fees start making more sense. For me, my participation in JordanCon was not financially motivated. I knew I was not going to make a profit at that event, but I went for personal reasons and to honor a friend who had championed my story and very much wanted me to be there. So that was not a typical situation. No Brand Con, the convention that I will end this video showing, that was a profit motivated convention, and I did make money there. So, different circumstances, different thought process, and naturally different results. So when selling at a craft fair or a convention, what are some things that an author should be thinking about? Well, number one, I would recommend leaning very hard on your brand of weird, especially if this is an event where you are not the only author present, or if it's a dedicated book event where everybody there is an author. At JordanCon, if I were to say I write epic fantasy, no one cares. That is a room full of fantasy authors. Everybody in Author's Alley, all 40 plus authors in attendance there write fantasy. Saying I write fantasy doesn't tell a reader any useful information. It would be better to say I write multiverse portal fantasy, or I write fantasy featuring found family and epic battles and humor. Or if I want to get really specific, leaning into something that is mine that probably no other story is going to have, I might ask readers, how do you feel about telepathic octopus? Or what do you think a civilization of ants would look like if they're all the size of golden retrievers? Something that is very specific to what differentiates my book versus everything else that's out on the floor. If you sell romance, it's not good enough to say that you sell romance. What are your tropes? What kind of vibes are you going for? What distinguishes you from the many, many, many other romance options that a reader has access to? What is unique and special about you that you can lean on to differentiate yourself from anybody else there? When I was at JordanCon, the best example of this, I was blessed to be immediate table neighbors with Bob McGough, whose site is talesbybob.com. He had a big sign up on his table that said Redneck Meth Wizard Books. You could see that sign from 100 feet away walking down the aisle, and it broke the ice for him because people would see the sign that says Redneck Meth Wizard Books, and they'd go, I need to know more about this. And that sign broke the ice for him. He would have people come up to his table asking him to explain what he means by that. And it was a natural icebreaker for him to make his pitch about his books. But he also told me that it works the other direction too, where people who see a sign that says Redneck Meth Wizard Books and they go, I don't like the sound of that, or that makes me uncomfortable, or I'm morally opposed to meth in any circumstances, and even if it's meant for comedic values, the people who would be repulsed by that sort of thing aren't even coming up to his table and talking to him. So his time isn't being wasted, and the reader's time is not being wasted when they both can understand from one simple sign that his work is probably not going to be for them. He had his pitch down perfect. And that's a great example of really leaning into your weird to differentiate yourself from everybody else that is in the crowd. Point number 2, panels sell books, so do them if you can. This is specific to conventions. Over the course of a weekend, I know authors can fear, well, doing a panel is time that I'm not at my table, so am I better off doing the panel and maybe not making some sales during that hour, or am I better just being at the table the whole time? And in my opinion, there is some balancing that needs to happen here. You don't want to do too many panels and spend too much time away from a table. But I do think that doing panels is worth it. And that if you're planning to attend a convention and they have open speaker signups for panels, then I would apply to be a speaker on panels and try to see how many you can get on, at least one per day of a convention. And I think those are great because those give you a chance to sit in front of an audience and discuss a topic, and they get to hear how you think. You get to show yourself as a subject matter expert on something. So it's a deeper dive into who you are and how and why you know what you're talking about. My experience has been that every time I have done a panel, people from the audience of that panel later stop by my table and they buy books. And they may have had no idea who I was before that panel. So for me, I felt it was always worth it doing a panel because that led to sales down the line. With conventions, expect more conversations that don't end in sales. It is a very big difference, 1-day craft fair versus 3-day convention. When people show up to a craft fair, they are there to buy. Sales are the entire point of the event. Come check out this cool stuff and shop. People are in a different mentality going to a convention where Artist's Alley, the vendor hall, whatever, those are side attractions to the convention. but people generally do not go to a convention just for access to, an author's alley or a dealer hall. Those are the side attractions. So there's less people there explicitly to buy, although because they did come to a convention, they are in a buying mood. And because it's a 3-day event, buyer habits are going to be spread out. If a convention starts on Friday, people on Friday may not want to spend their entire budget for the weekend on the first day of the convention. What I often do when I attend a convention, and what I noticed a lot of other people doing, is Friday is the day to case the vendor hall, see who is there, see what the options are, maybe talk with some authors or some artists to get a sense as to what they're selling. And you make a mental inventory of all of that, compare that against what your budget is for the weekend, and then maybe make purchasing decisions on Saturday or Sunday. So, in the context of a 3-day convention, any sales on Friday are great, but I would not pin all of my hopes on Friday or think that because Friday was slow that it's going to be a bad convention. At both JordanCon and No Brand Con, I had a lot of people speak to me on Friday. I had some good conversations. They would walk away with no sale, and then I would see those people again on Saturday, and they'd already talked to me. They'd already heard my pitch. So then it was just, okay, I'd like to buy a book, please. And, they're giving me their money. I'm signing their book. They're happy. They go on their way. So Saturday is probably peak sales day. Sunday can be pretty good. My Sundays tend to be better than my Fridays still, because again, a lot of people don't necessarily want to spend on Friday. So think about that and spreading out expectations across the 3-day weekend. There will be downtime. Take advantage of it. There's always going to be ebbs and flows at a craft fair or a convention, depending on the hours of operation. Think about lunchtime lulls. If an event goes from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., there could be a lull when a bunch of people go and eat their lunch, or people ate their lunch early and then you see a spike. Look to those ebbs and flows of traffic. Same thing with conventions. To use JordanCon as another example, when Brandon Sanderson was giving his keynote address for 90 minutes, you could hear a pin drop in the author's alley because almost everybody at JordanCon was in there listening to Brandon Sanderson speak. I knew I wasn't going to make any sales during those 90 minutes. There's going to be those things. Or if a convention has a cosplay contest, that's another very popular event to attend. So expect traffic to drop during the cosplay competition. So when there's those valleys in traffic flow and attendance during a live event, that is a great time to chat up your table mates, the people selling to your left or your right or across the aisle from you. Learn what they do, learn how they approach different events and how they manage inventory. At JordanCon, that was a great chance for me to talk to other authors who have more convention experience about their table setups and how they approach things. So if there's nothing immediately that you can be doing from a sales perspective, learn from your neighbors, network, get to know each other. If you make a habit of doing a lot of conventions, you'll start to see the same people over and over and over again. The other people who are on that grind or really enjoy doing conventions. So it's a good habit to get to know some of those players. Just be nice to each other. Good social graces make the whole experience a lot easier for everybody. Plus, then if they know what your products are, you know what their products are, at that current show or future shows, if it comes up in conversation, hey, I really like this kind of book or this kind of character, you can say, hey, it sounds like you would love so-and-so author's booth. They're actually just next aisle over, go talk to them. And you can be good neighbors to each other, sending each other business if you know each other's books, understand each other's books, and can make those connections. So I think it's always worth talking to table mates and just, making friends and being nice to people and networking if there's little to no foot traffic. Now, live events are not the only way to sell a book. If you are looking to integrate direct sales into your marketing strategy, or you're looking for options and tools that you can use as part of the brainstorming, writing, or editing process, Letterpress can help with that, and here's how. Letterpress is an all-in-one writing and publishing platform where authors can link their books on their website, and with one click, readers can pull up the book and immediately start reading. Authors make 100% royalties on their direct sales. As you can see here, it takes seconds to upload a book. This clip is not sped up. And just like that, a manuscript is there for final editing and publication. Authors set their own prices and, as I said, make 100% royalties on their direct sales, less payment processing fees. Payment is handled through Stripe, so it's safe and secure. Besides standalone book purchases, authors can also offer monthly or annual subscriptions. On the writing side, we offer AI-assisted tools that can help with brainstorming, plotting, drafting, and revising. So come up with an idea and it'll give you a rough outline that you can work with, generate some characters, and choose from one of 24 genre plot templates or create your own. Once that has been fleshed out, then you have an entire working plot line to go with and can from there very quickly start generating scenes and writing rough drafts for chapters to get over staring at the blank page and much more quickly start diving into editing and revising a rough draft to bring your story to life. Try it for free at letterpress.com. The more titles you have, the better. I think this one's reasonably obvious. The more titles you have, the more different avenues you have to introduce a reader to your settings, to your worlds, the higher upside potential you have selling a book to a reader. If you only have one book out, as has been my case, realistically, the max I'm going to make off of any reader is one sale of a $20 book. Whereas if I had 3 books out, I could be selling 3 books, maybe $60 to one person if they really want all 3. Or if I have multiple series, they might like a little of column A, a little of column B. So in general, I would recommend craft fairs and lower table fee events if you're starting out and you only have one book, because it's going to be easier to earn that back, especially with a lower potential maximum sales per customer. Having more books means those whale readers can be more potentially lucrative. It makes it easier to justify conventions. Knowing what I know now, I did those couple conventions as practice runs, but I would generally recommend conventions only if you have 3 to 5 books or more. Other than that, below that, I would stay in most circumstances to single-day craft fairs and lower table fee events. The importance of inventory management. This is not a sexy topic, but if you are selling at a live event, it is important to be mindful of moving books around, how much books weigh, how many of them do you need to bring to an event. Because mistakes can be very expensive. So, for example, when I went to JordanCon, I knew that JordanCon's attendance would be 1,500 people. So I thought that I would sell books to 4 to 5% of the total attendance to the convention. And so I printed and shipped books to Atlanta proportionally. But my learning experience was that I was a debut author with only one book out in a hyper-competitive environment of 40 other fantasy authors, all of whom had more books out. I was the only debut author in Author's Alley. So that was a hyper-competitive environment where it's much tougher to sell versus an anime convention where I was the only option there for book lovers. So I did not sell 4 to 5% of the crowd. So what happened is, because I overprinted so much, all of the money that I made in profits just went into paying the shipping fees to send the extra overstock books home. So that was kind of my lesson, that if it had been an event I could drive to and I could have just put all of those books in the trunk of my car, would not have mattered because I wouldn't have had any shipping fees. But for a long distance event where product needs to be shipped back and forth, I think it is better to be more conservative than grossly overestimate the number of books you're going to sell. There's also the idea of, how far do you have to physically carry books to get to the venue? Are you parking a block away from where your vendor table is going to be and then you have to walk? Can you pull up very close to the table? One box of my books, because I had a 550 page big thick book, a box of those can weigh 40, 45, 50 pounds. Which is very bulky, heavy, and awkward to haul around. So I learned the hard way that I really don't want to be doing that. So I invested in a wagon that I can put the boxes of books in and just push the wagon behind me or pull it behind me. And that makes getting the books to a table 1,000 times easier. Absolutely justified the expense. All right. And here you can see my setup for JordanCon in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And I want to draw attention to what was not here in the earlier photo. That is the plush octopus and the plush ant that is on my table. And this is me learning to lean into my weird. I did not bring those to Atlanta, and after seeing a plush possum and redneck meth wizards at Bob McGo's table, I immediately felt like a fool for second-guessing myself in not bringing those. So the stuffed animals are now at my table. Both represent characters that are in my book. They are fun. They can add a little bit of color. They serve as icebreakers. You'll also note that I have a standee with snippets of some of my 5-star reviews as social proof. I think that is helpful, especially if you're a debut, to have a little bit of social proof that your book is good. And because I went to the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and this convention was in Eau Claire, I also had a sign that indicated I was a UWEC alumni. I don't know that that led to any additional sales, but it couldn't hurt me. It was an icebreaker. It established local relevance. So again, those sorts of things that can help you draw interest and get people talking at your table. So in summary, I love live events. I think they're absolutely worth doing. But as a new author, I would start with local events, smaller table fees, work on polishing your table presentation, work on how you pitch your book to readers, and recognize that that pitch may need to vary in different circumstances. I did not explain my book the same way at JordanCon, which is a fantasy book convention full of fantasy book nerds, as I did at JordanCon, which is an anime convention full of anime nerds. And I don't use nerd as an insult. I'm a nerd myself. Nerds are my people. But at an anime convention, this is a convention where a lot of people there are Dungeons and Dragons players. A lot of them like Magic the Gathering. There were Magic the Gathering events and booster drafts happening at this event. There were several tables in the artist alley selling Final Fantasy themed character art. So I found that I had a lot of success there, not explaining my book compared to other books, because at an anime convention, it's not a guarantee that everybody there is a regular reader, but I explained it in comparison to those other big intellectual properties that have a lot of fan presence that may be familiar to people who are attending anime conventions. And when I started leaning on those comparisons, I found that those work best for me making sales at an anime convention. So kind of understanding the local market or the makeup of the people who are attending event, that really helps a lot. But what I liked about the convention in Eau Claire was that I would have people buy it on Friday or Saturday, and because I was the only author there, they started reading their book immediately as soon as they had free time. I wasn't one of a stack of books acquired for somebody's TPR pile. So they would come back the next day and tell me how far they got, or tell me what they liked about it, or give me their thoughts. And for me, that was really gratifying. That was something I enjoyed.